We're looking at Photoshop CC and using it in creating a logo. Then we're going to go into the selection tools, layers, gradients, pictures, some of the shape tools. So the first thing we're going to look at in the toolbar is going to be the selection tools. And to use the selection tools, I'm going to need an image. And notice over here in the layers, layers are very important in Photoshop, that I have the background image, which was there before I put the picture down. Once I put the picture down, the layer was created for the picture. So I'm going to the selection tools now. And you have rectangular, elliptical, single row, single row. For our purposes, rectangular or elliptical really are the only two that we should be concerned with. So I'm on the right layer, and I'm just going to pull a rectangle. I'm going to go up to Edit, to Copy. See, I have two layers. Copy. Now I'm going to go up and do Paste. Notice I have three layers, and I've just pasted on that little area I copied. So I could do the same thing with a elliptical shape or with the other shapes. So next I'm going to go into the lasso tool. This is more of a freehand if you find the need for this. So I'm just going to go right around this using the mouse, and I've selected it. Again, if I want to copy it and paste it, I can do the exact same thing. We go to the next one, which is the polygonal tool, and how this works is you click around it. So this might be faster in some cases where you want to tidy things up after you've gotten out a rough image. And after this, we have the magnetic. So what the magnetic's going to do, it's going to find the edges for you. See, it's finding the edges. But you can't have two images you can't have an image that is muddled into the background and expect this to work good. There has to be some type of a distinction between the image and whatever type of a background it's in. The next tool I'm going to look at will be the Magic Wand tool. This is a great tool. And a good way of explaining it, I think, is by looking at a water with sand. And if you notice that the sand is a one solid color here, then it gradually will be turning into a blue. Well, with a magic wand, you have a tolerance. So if I had a tolerance of 2, and you're working with your colors, that as soon as you go from one color into another color, it stops. It only selects a very small dot, which you can basically hardly see. Go a little faster here to make a point. I just did 25. So see how it's picking up a real lot, because it's adding the amount of colors that can fall into the selection. So you can imagine how this could be really handy in some cases. So I'm going to jump it up to 64. And you see what it does. Next is a cropping tool, and it's fairly simple what that does. You click on it, and it's going to get your image. If I want to get rid of some area, say I want to get rid of the plane, double click, and it's gone. The eyedropper tool, this is going to get colors. So notice the colors over here, black and white. There's my blue color. Now I have the tan color. So I've taken away layer visibility over here on some of these images. And one other thing you have to know about layers in Photoshop is that the top image, if I take this image and I've just made it visible by clicking on the eye. Now if I grab this image and I bring it down the bottom, it's going to disappear behind everything. So the top layer has precedence. What I'm going to do is select this layer, go up to Edit, go to down to Transform, and you have all these great tools. One being Scale, that you'll use a real lot. Rotate, Skew, Distort, Perspective, Warp. But I'm just going to use Scale. And by holding down the Shift, I'm going to scale this proportionally. And come to the Text tool. Click that and notice that there's a text area over in your layer palette now. Here's one great trick, which is going up to the window and coming down to character, which is going to open up the character window. And this is just really convenient to have this if you're working with text. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make this lettering bigger. And for organic, when you think of organic, you think more in round shapes rather than square, rectangular shapes. So I would look for a font that's round and it's bold, regular. Here I can change the color. Okay. And notice the text is on top of the layer. So what I can do is go up to the Move tool whenever I want to move something, and I can pull it right on top. But that's terrible, because if I put that there now, it's fighting with the background in order to see it. So this would help a little bit. But another little trick you can do is come down to the Layers palette when you have your font or your typeface selected, and you see FX, which is Special Effects. You click on it, and I see an effect in here called Outer Glow. So see now what happens. You have a little bit of white on the outside of the letters. And I'll come up here to Normal. I see the opacity 75. So you see it's getting bigger all the time, easier to read. And here's your other controls. You see what's happening? You know, that might be a bit too much, but you can see how that would work. Now coming to the shape tools, coming down here, you have rectangle, you have rounded rectangle, you have ellipse tool. I'll try the rounded rectangle. And I'm just going to pull a square. And the square is going to be that color. I think I'll change the color. Now you can see that's above our, I'm going up to the Move tool, that's above our text, so we don't see our text. So I'm going to grab the layer and pull it down. I'm using the Move tool, so you can just barely see that text. So I select the text layer, come over to color, in my character, make it a little bit bigger. Gradients work great as far as logos are concerned. So I'm just going to go to the image and I'm going to select an area. And I'm going to make a gradient. So you go over to the tool palette, and right behind the paint bucket is the gradient tool. So if I go up here, I see the gradient I have, which is fairly close to the colors I already have there. So if I want to change that color of this little box, I come down here and I'll move that to wherever I want it. But I'm satisfied with these colors. If I click here, I can put in a new color. But I don't want that, so I'm just going to grab it and pull it off. So like I said, the colors are good. So what I'm going to do is come in here. I'm going to make a new layer and I'm going to create a gradient. So come up to this rectangle, which is really tiny, you can barely see, and I see new layer. I'll call this gradient. Also, I could go up here and do new layer and do the exact same thing. So there's two areas to do that. So I have my new gradient layer. All I have to do is come over. I have my gradient selected. Here's my gradient right up here. Just come over here. I hold down Shift so I make a straight line. And there's my gradient. Or I could have it going this way, that way. You know, depending on where you start the line and where you stop is going to make a difference. So if I want to change my colors, Now one more trick after this, after the gradient, is using two pictures to make a collage. So here's one picture that I've already added. You see the layer right here. So I'm going to come up here to the pictures folder and grab this picture and drag it right on top. So you see right on top of the picture of the woman, we have the picture of the baby. So the next thing we're going to do is add what's called the layer mask to that. And we do that by coming all the way to the bottom of the layers palette. I can take the layers palette out and it might make this a little bit easier to see. So here was your special effects, and here's your layer mask right here. So I have the top layer selected and I use the layer mask. Notice that. Now I'm going to come back over to my gradient, but for this you're always using just black and white colors when you're using the gradient. So I come back over to my gradient, come up here, and by default there's a black and white color right there. Now I'm going to pull a gradient again. I have the gradient selected. I'm on the top layer and I've made the mask on the top layer. So you see what happens. Use the move tool. I have the top layer selected. You know, it might start making better sense over here. So those are some great tricks you can use to make a logo.